Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I've got a story for you today that still gives me chills just thinking about it. It happened a few years ago when I was living alone in a small rental house on the outskirts of Austin, Texas. It was one of those quiet, almost too quiet, neighborhoods where the silence at night is so deep it feels like a physical presence. This particular night, a storm was brewing, the wind was howling, rattling the old window frames, and rain was just starting to spit against the glass. It was the perfect backdrop for a horror movie, which, ironically, is exactly what I was trying to find on Netflix. I was curled up on my bed, propped against a mountain of pillows, scrolling through my phone. The house was completely dark except for the glow of the screen in my hands. It was late, probably past midnight. The storm was getting worse, and the occasional flash of lightning would illuminate my room in stark, ghostly flashes, followed by a low rumble of thunder that seemed to shake the whole house. I wasn't scared of storms. I actually found them kind of comforting. The sound of the rain was like white noise, usually helping me drift off to sleep, but not tonight. That's when I heard it. At first, I thought it was just the house settling, or maybe a branch scraping against the roof. But this sound was different. It was distinct. It was the sound of a footstep. It came from the living room, which was just on the other side of my thin bedroom door. My heart did a little jump. I paused my scrolling and held my breath, listening. The wind howled again, and I tried to convince myself that's all it was. My imagination, fueled by the late hour and the gloomy weather, I was just being paranoid. Then I heard another one, and another, heavy, deliberate, slow. This wasn't the wind. This wasn't the house settling. This was someone walking across my living room floor. The floorboards in that old house were creaky, and I knew their song by heart. I knew the specific groan they made when I walked to the kitchen for a midnight snack. These groans were heavier, more spaced out, purposeful. Someone was in my house. Every muscle in my body tensed up. I went completely rigid, lying there in the dark. My phone, which felt like a lifeline just moments before, now felt impossibly heavy in my hand. My fingers were trembling so badly I could barely keep a grip on it. My mind raced. Did I lock the back door? I was sure I did. I always did. But front door? Yes, definitely. I remembered turning the deadbolt. How could someone be inside? My breath caught in my throat, a painful, silent gasp. All I could do was listen. The footsteps continued their slow, terrifying march across the living room. Step creak, pause. Step creak, pause. They were getting closer, closer to my bedroom. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I was afraid whoever it was could hear it. I wanted to call 911, but I was paralyzed by fear. The thought of making a sound, of alerting the intruder to my exact location, was more terrifying than anything else. So I just lay there, a statue of pure terror, praying they would just take whatever they wanted and leave. Then, the footsteps stopped, right outside my bedroom door. The silence that followed was somehow 1,000 times worse than the sound of the walking. It was a heavy, expectant silence. I stared at the bottom of my door, at the tiny crack of darkness between the wood and the floor. My eyes were wide, straining in the pitch black. A flash of lightning lit up the world outside, and in that split second, I saw it, a shadow. A dark shape passed under the door, momentarily blocking the faint light from the hallway. It was the shadow of feet, standing right there. My blood ran cold. I couldn't breathe. I was trapped. There was a person on the other side of that door, just standing there, waiting. I braced myself for the sound of the handle turning, for the door to swing open. I squeezed my eyes shut, not wanting to see the face that belonged to those feet. Seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity. My entire life didn't flash before my eyes, but every horror movie I'd ever seen did. Every scenario played out in my head, each one more gruesome than the last. I waited, and waited, but the door never opened. The handle never turned. After what felt like hours of suffocating silence, the shadow under the door was just gone. I didn't hear it move away. I didn't hear any more footsteps. It was just gone. The silence returned, but this time it was just empty. I stayed awake for the rest of the night, my back pressed against the headboard, eyes glued to the door, phone clutched in a death grip. I listened to the storm rage outside, and eventually, die down. The first hints of dawn started to creep through my window, painting the room in shades of gray. I had never been so relieved to see the sunrise in my entire life. Only when the sun was fully up, streaming bright and warm into my room, did I finally feel brave enough to move. My muscles ached from being so tense all night. I slowly, cautiously, slid out of bed. My feet touched the cold floor, and I tiptoed to the door. My hand shook as I reached for the knob. I took a deep breath, twisted it, and pulled the door open, peering into the living room. Nothing. Everything was exactly as I had left it. The TV was off. The throw blanket was still folded over the armchair. Nothing was stolen, nothing was out of place. I checked the front door, the deadbolt was still locked from the inside. I checked the back door, same thing, securely locked. All the windows were closed and latched. There was no sign of a break-in. I felt a wave of confusing relief mixed with utter disbelief. Had I really imagined the whole thing? Was it just a waking nightmare brought on by the storm? I started to think I was going crazy. I walked back toward my bedroom, my mind trying to rationalize what had happened. Maybe the wind had made a branch sound like footsteps. Maybe a passing car's headlights had created the shadow under the door. It was all possible, I guess. I was exhausted and my mind was playing tricks on me. That's what I told myself. And then I saw them, and every rational explanation, every bit of skepticism, evaporated in an instant. There, on the light-colored carpet of my bedroom, were footprints, muddy footprints. They weren't mine. They were large, much larger than my own, the tread of a heavy work boot caked in dark wet soil. My heart stopped. The trail started near the door, crossed the room, and led directly to the side of my bed, right to the spot where I had been lying frozen in fear all night. And that's where they stopped. The footprints led to my bed, and nowhere else. There was no trail leading away. It was as if the person who made them had walked to my bedside, stood over me while I pretended to sleep, and then simply vanished into thin air. I didn't scream. I didn't even make a sound. I just stood there, staring at the muddy evidence of my impossible visitor. I packed a bag, called my landlord to break the lease, and was out of that house by noon. I never spent another night there, and I still can't explain what happened. Who was in my house? How did they get in and out without a trace? And what did they want? The image of those footprints ending at my bed is burned into my memory. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes, the things that go bump in the night are more real than we could ever imagine. Thanks for listening to my story. It's one I don't tell often. Let me know in the comments if you ever had a paranormal experience or an unexplained event that you just coo and shake. I'd love to hear them. Stay safe out there, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. See you in the next one.